White professor suddenly discovered that the new janitor in the lab was secretly reading his medical tome. Seeing him so focused, the professor had a sudden idea to test this studious janitor. So he immediately pointed to an instrument nearby and asked him what it was. Unexpectedly, the janitor answered without hesitation.
Van Slyke Neil gas manometer, sir, doctor.
The professor was somewhat incredulous because the answer was completely correct. He then asked to see the janitor's hands. After just a moment of observation, the professor felt like he had discovered a rare treasure. He immediately handed him a pair of test tube tongs and asked him to pick up a test tube nearby. The janitor easily completed the task. The professor then decided to increase the difficulty by asking him to use his left hand, but he still performed the task smoothly and easily, even managing to pick up a cork and seal the bottle with a reverse grip. This skillful technique greatly impressed the professor. Even his university students didn't have this level of skill. So the janitor, named Thomas, was promoted to lab assistant the next day. However, when his wife heard the news, she wasn't happy because although the lab assistant job sounded good, the weekly salary was only a meager $12. A carpenter's job paid 3 times that amount, but Thomas seemed to value the long-term potential of this job. Even though the assistant's salary was only a third of a carpenter's, Thomas was very content. This dedication and thirst for knowledge would eventually pay off. A few months later, he finally got the chance to perform surgery himself. During a traumatic shock experiment, the professor drew a black line on an unconscious dog and ordered Thomas to cut along the line. Thomas did not disappoint the professor's expectations, accurately making an incision on the dog's abdomen. Watching the blood pressure gradually drop on the manometer, the professor said that the traditional treatment was to constrict the blood vessels, but years of research had shown him that this method wasn't very successful. So today he decided to break with tradition and transfuse blood into the dog by dilating the blood vessels. But after Thomas followed the instructions, he found that the blood pressure continued to drop. This meant that the professor's years of research would be ridiculed. Just as he was feeling dejected, the mercury column in the manometer miraculously began to rise again. This was a sign of life returning. The two of them smiled at each other. At this moment, the professor asked to see the work records, but looking around, he couldn't find the recorder. Upon inquiry, he learned that Thomas, who had come into the field halfway, didn't know what a record was. This made the professor extremely angry. A high-ranking medical doctor actually started cursing.
A whole day's work goes down the toilet and I have to start all over again. Do you have sawdust or just plain shit for brains?
These harsh words made Thomas very upset. He had thought the professor was a beacon of light in the vast sea of people, but now it seemed that this was just an illusion. In the end, disappointment and anger drove him away from this dreamland. But after Thomas left, the professor found a notebook on the table. It was Thomas's work record, detailing every step and operation of the surgery. The level of detail was several times that of the recorder. Seeing this, the professor realized he had wronged Thomas, so he immediately ran outside and apologized to him.
It won't happen again.